welcome to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with marketplace founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces every Tuesday. So this is episode 9, and I'm excited to welcome Daniel Doubrovkine, who's previously the CTO at Artsy and is now at Aws Data Exchange. So Daniel's an incredibly sharp mind, a leader in the CTO and open source community, and has an incredible marketplace experience. So you're certainly going to enjoy today's chat. So warm welcome, Daniel, and let's start off by maybe you sharing more on your background and how you got onto marketplaces.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here and to talk marketplaces, which seems like the theme of my life over the past over 10 years, as I've been working on Artsy, Aws Data Exchange, and now AWS Marketplace as well. I started as a founder and entrepreneur in the 90s, had 2 small companies selling shareware on the internet, and then ended up leaving, this was in Switzerland, I ended up leaving for the US, worked for Microsoft. I worked on Microsoft Billing for a while, which was an interesting platform that powered a lot of payments at Microsoft, including some of the early marketplace tech. Worked for some startups, database security company, and then landed as head of engineering at Artsy, where we've built the largest online art marketplace, Artsy.net. I left after 8 years and joined Aws Data Exchange before it was released. We shipped the service in November 2019, and now I'm working across Data Exchange and AWS Marketplace as a principal engineer.
Nice. And then maybe could you let's maybe start with speaking about the early days of Artsy and kind of, maybe speak to, how you joined the team and got started.
I didn't join a marketplace. What I joined was a big idea, and there was a project called the Art Genome Project, which was a classification system for contemporary art. So art historians would look at works of art that came from museums, galleries, etc., and would classify them according to these features and give some kind of value to each feature. So for example, this is abstract expressionist, iconic work, we'll give it 100 in abstract expressionism, and so on and so forth. So this manual classification system, and what we built is a similarity engine. You see a work on Artsy, and we showed you similar works by other artists. So not works that you like this, therefore you'd like that, but more a way to navigate the art catalog in an art historical way. And once we've built that catalog, we tried to enable various businesses on top of that. And the first business that Artsy walked into or stumbled upon is galleries that wanted to pay the company a subscription fee to be on the platform for lead generation marketing purposes. So you can see this third-party system already existed as an idea from day one. The works had to come from somewhere, whether it's galleries, museums, or institutions, or auction houses. And then there were consumers, collectors, that were interested in exploring that art world in one place. So the marketplace, in a way, was already born there. It was not a transactional marketplace. You could inquire on works from galleries, and then the gallery would engage with you first over email, then through automated systems to connect, and then hopefully one day purchase art. And Artsy did not take commission at the time. It was the subscription service for galleries. Then we built a live bidding platform for auction houses, first for charities that was kind of an eBay style where it's timed auctions, and then finally live bidding, so companies like Philips, Christie's and others would use Artsy as a channel to sell works where it was a non-exclusive place to bid. So we kind of built all these multiple parts of a marketplace, one after another, looking for a business model that would work in this three-party exchange from the very, very early days. And I came to it perfectly randomly. I have an interest in art. I've been drawing all my life, but and that was certainly the subject itself. Art was really relevant to me. But mostly I was interested in the engineering problems, building a team from scratch. I was maybe 7th employee at the company or something like that. And then I learned a lot about the business and the marketplaces really there over 8 years. Artsy is a Series D company today, has raised $101 million and continues to grow nicely.
Nice, nice. So maybe could you speak to maybe some of the early challenges that you saw?
From the technical point of view, we had to decide what to build and what not to build. That was probably the first big challenge and big decision. We decided that the R Genome project technology was core to what we're doing, and so the whole similarity and all the other aspects of that were core to us. So we decided to build. We also built a lot of the website user experience because that was key to the success of an art company. We call this quality worthy of art. You can't put art on a website that is just not, where art is not front and center and the high quality. So a lot of the user experience challenges and a lot of the infrastructure to power the Art Genome project. From the business point of view, it was really, as any startup, where is the value to which customer, and trying to find early business model. Probably after 2 years of building the Art Genome project search, we finally got it working. We finally had something where people who understood art could look at the results and be like, yes, this is something that, as this looks like something I would see in a museum show where there's a centerpiece and then there are other works by other artists that are relevant. Something that the curator would do, but at scale this time with computers. So,
nice.
and of course, all the usual startup stuff like growing people, teams, and the nonsense of any kind of early enterprise.
Yeah, so super interesting as far as the Genome project. At that point, did you you were saying like at the 2-year mark, did you figure out the business model? Did you guys feel like it?
Not at all. We knew that we wanted a world with more art. We wanted people to engage with art. There's really no place to find art online at that time from all the commercial, non-commercial entities in one place. Google does a terrible job at image search, artwork search. You can see the Mona Lisa, the original, and then next to it, a bunch of memes. So that's not really a great navigation experience for art. Or people would try something similar to the real world where like walk into a gallery, a virtual experience, something like that. That's great, but we have the internet. It has some capabilities around how much data we can store, what kind of experience we can enable. And Artsy wanted to build something unique, a unique value proposition that would actually serve people online with a clear advantage. So we spent 2 years on that. We had no business model, but we knew, we had confidence that in a market which has kind of both sides of it interested in connecting, we'd find a business model, and we did.
Yeah, nice. And then so maybe what was like the team makeup like at that point?
So Artsy's founder and CEO Carter Cleveland was relatively fresh out of school. He had this big idea, and he really built out a few folks around him in the early days before I came to the company to build demo version of Artsy. He did partner with a seasoned exec from Christie's, Sebastian Quilic, who was running a private sales business inside Christie's for a number of years. So you had this art world experience, and you had a vision from a young and ambitious founder. And then we hired the other people, including myself, someone to take engineering more seriously. So we're no longer in like prototype stages, but have to build something that will scale for customers. And then we hired a head of design very early because this is about art. The head of design acted as head of product for a very long time. And then your typical startup growth of people management and so on and so forth. On the engineering team, I ended up having a handful of really strong engineers that started as individual contributors, and then some of them grew into management and so on and so forth. When I left, I think the team was something like 40 or 50 people on the engineering side.
Nice. Yeah, I know you've written quite a bit as far as CTO level and VP of engineering. Some great articles on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I did have a question too. I wanted to bring up as far as the Art Genome project. Is that how did that kind of coincide with? I wanted to ask a little bit about the open source, and I know you published a post about that. Was that at was that at the same time or?
So these are, I'd say these are probably most unrelated.
Okay.
I've been doing open source since early 2000s, and mostly to help myself or my teams. This was I didn't feel like this is some kind of like we need to make open source for the greater humanity or anything like that. It might do that, but that was not my interest. At Artsy, we became open source by default, and I'd say the biggest advantage of doing so was hiring. It was and continues to be a differentiator in hiring. We were able to hire people that otherwise would just not consider Artsy as an option. And then once you have some of these people and make open source part of their job, they bring in others. I think it's a cheaper way to build software. It's a higher quality way to build software, and it's a no-brainer from the business point of view because it attracts the kind of talent that you need. Most engineers today want to work in the open. Especially in a small company, you don't have access to the kind of expertise I may have, for example, right now at Amazon. So you have to find different ways. And how do you do it? Well, you become part of a much larger engineering organization, which is worldwide. And you can't just go and ask questions. You also have to contribute to it if you want to have genuine support from all these other people. So Artsy has built a lot of open source code and collaborated with tons of engineers that work for some large companies like Airbnb or others on technology, and we did it in the open. So it's a win-win from all points of view.
Awesome. And then at what time point during the company was that though?
From the beginning, I had an open source policy in the company very early. The Carter, the CEO, has seen that as what's another way. For him, it was completely obvious that we should be doing more software in the open. So we open sourced everything except the core competencies or some kind of IP advantage or anything that was proprietary. But it was much easier to ask ourselves what should be closed than to ask ourselves what should be open. And so the policy was you're open source by default, and then if something is proprietary, then find a reason for it to be proprietary. It's just a lot fewer projects. Most software, especially in marketplaces, like moving data around. So there's nothing too particularly challenging in that.
Yeah. So it sounds like you guys had like quite the product and at some sense of scale, of course. So what were some of the I would say from like an engineering side, if we want to jump into that a little bit, what were some of the big engineering challenges?
I think maybe challenges of any kind of system is what is it going to be tomorrow? So Artsy didn't know what its business plan was. We were building our genome. Then we had some business, but we weren't sure whether we're going to become a commission-based platform or not, or something else, right? We were a content platform. Actually, Artsy is the largest online art publication from the readership point of view. Like I think 1.7 million people read it now monthly or something like that. It's a large amount of people. So suddenly we're a content platform. So not knowing what you're building long term is probably the biggest challenge of systems. Difficult to maneuver that system. Scale came relatively quickly as well, so we started seeing significant traffic, and we needed to render things really fast, and all the usual technical challenges that the system would have. And that's all past the super exciting Art Genome project similarity engine stuff. Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, while that was really challenging, today this is something you can get out of the box from systems like Elasticsearch. Like that was a problem then, if we had just waited 2 years, would have been probably in the same or better space, because software evolves so rapidly.
Yeah, yeah. So just on that kind of note, by the way, you froze for a second, so I kind of missed a little bit about that, my unstable internet connection, so I have to apologize about that. But I'm curious as far as like when you're talking about, you know, what to build next and kind of figuring out your business model. When you start introducing transactions in the process and, you know, some of the complexities such as that, you know, how did you handle approaching that from like a product and technical side when you're already at some sense of scale?
So the first thing I did is imagine that this is going to be a global marketplace where we'll be conducting a lot of transactions, and in every country in the world, right? So I went to talk to, I polled the New York CTO club, which I'm a member of, and asked for help about how to build one of those things, which is generally, I think, good advice. Before you build anything, just go ask smarter people than you for advice. And I think I got access to some people like the CTO of HSBC or companies, you know, massive companies. And I got the downstream information, like the brain dump of how it would take to build, you know, global HSBC-sized transactions for everything. And when I looked at that, I said, okay, well, that sounds very ambitious, and it's nice if we can get there. But now let's see what our use cases really are. And so we built the simplest thing possible, and then iterated from there. So I guess the job of a CTO is always to think big in terms of long-term value and how it's going to evolve, but start at the absolute minimal viable product. We use Stripe. We used Braintree or another company in the beginning. We had a hard time finding a payment processor that would support the marketplace at all. And this third-party model where you have sellers that have to register. And then eventually that became Stripe and worked. Today it's much easier. But yeah, we just built an MVP, and you could like pay for something. That was it. So no massive technology, and nothing dramatic, and relied on third parties where we could, because there's just some things that are not a core competency for a company like Artsy. Like payments is definitely not a core competency. Overly optimizing for like taxes and things like that, it's too early. Just pay the money.
Is it today? Is it a transactional based marketplace today?
It is. So Artsy makes money in a variety of ways today. It's a subscription platform where galleries pay a subscription fee. It's a transactional marketplace. We can go and buy art. There's a mechanism called buy now, make offer. So you can negotiate prices or check out e-commerce style. You can go and bid on an auction. This was the last time I wrote any real code at Artsy. I wrote this time-based auction system, and then we evolved it quite a bit to enable live bidding, which is really technically challenging because, you know, auctions go on, and if your system doesn't work, the auction still goes on. And your customers are very upset when they bid and they cannot win, even though they tried to bid enough money. So live bidding is much harder. But you can live bid, and you can end up purchasing something from the auction where you go and pay afterwards. So there's a variety of mechanisms that end up collecting money. So very much a full-blown marketplace today for fine art, and entirely custom built. So that is not, it's not relying on any third-party e-commerce system. It is relying on Stripe to process payments.
Got it.
So it's not, it stops at like the PCI compliant stuff. There's no financial transaction information, financial information stored that would fall under PCI, PCI rules. Everything else is inside the marketplace.
That's quite the undertaking.
Yeah, and you know, this was very incremental. I don't think it was like, let's build this from scratch. Today at Amazon, I see things built much more thoughtfully because we know scale will come. But for a startup like Artsy, it is very much like, let's figure out what the MVP is, let's figure out the shortcuts, and let's make sure the boxes are correct so that I can fill the boxes with better technology or better infrastructure, better systems, or maybe better third-party vendors if needed later. Yeah. So as long as the architecture is fine, I I think you're okay.
Yeah, that's great advice. So maybe just to provide some kind of insights or guidance, maybe for founders in the early stage that are in kind of complex markets, and they're trying to find their business model, in a similar fashion. Is there anything that you kept in mind or you thought about that kind of helped you kind of navigate that?
I think it's very important to figure out what your core competencies are and iterate really quickly. So if I were rebuilding Artsy today from scratch, knowing everything I know, I would have probably made the mistake of like going with like a Shopify or something like that, use somebody else's infrastructure. And within 3 to 5 years would have found myself in a difficult place of having to grow in a different way from there. So I still think it would have been the right thing to do. If you're building a marketplace today, go with a third-party system so you can prove that you actually have a market, that you actually have buyers and you have sellers. Build it in any way possible. Don't overthink the long term, and then scrap it and build it again, maybe on different technology. So unless you have something like the Art Genome project, which is hyper-specific to the business, and you have some technological advantage that you may gain by building it, don't build it. Go buy it somewhere. I think that's like the rule of thumb that I would follow for a small startup today.
Nice. That's super helpful. I definitely subscribe to the third-party kind of tools and platforms like no code and whatnot as much as you can. So,
but for the advice, I guess, to anyone, and this is not just small or large, I'll take that from AWS, is focus on your customers. Find a customer that is willing to pay for something, and don't assume that you know better. If you can find an engaged customer, then build with them the thing that you're trying to create. You have a hypothesis, but the hypothesis, if it's just a feeling, it's worth nothing. If you have a customer, then it's really worth something.
Yeah, no, that's great. Do you think that's that relationship early with the galleries, for instance, in the early days of Artsy, is what led you to then be able to figure out how we can involve them in our marketplace and add value and charge them?
Well, absolutely. Artsy's first galleries that were really onboarded were some of the largest. This is a reason to have more powerful investors, advisors. Artsy went to Gagosian Gallery, which is like the biggest gallery in the world, and Larry Gagosian, and convinced him that the Art Genome project is something that is worth his time at all. And so Larry was an early advisor to Artsy almost day one. So if you can convince your most difficult customer, the one who is really not looking at your tiny little insignificant marketplace, that there is something there, then you have something. So yeah, this is why Artsy was able to grow like this. It's because it validated its business. Maybe not the business model, but validated there was some demand for something very, very early.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I know that's why you and I first spoke was about three or 4 years ago now, and on like a small side project I was working on in the art space, and that was kind of what you mentioned then. So.
Yeah, the art world is very particular. It's also something that doesn't work according to logic sometimes. So it's a Me Too industry in a way where a gallery might be on your platform because their competitor is there, and that's really important to them. So there's all kinds of nonsense of where the artwork quality itself is probably the least relevant element in a marketplace for fine art. People buy art for a variety of reasons: status, fame, name recognition, image recognition. Like I have something iconic at my home, and that means a lot. So it's not, you have to understand the business. I guess the other advice I would give to anyone is that try not to go into businesses that you don't know. In the art market, every single company that has had, that tried to be successful in the art market, but had founders that were not actively engaged in the art market before, I don't know a single one that has succeeded. I think they all have failed, because you have to understand the business today, and then see how you can improve it tomorrow, and what unique value what defensible value can provide.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you didn't share for context, but yeah, you're an artist yourself. So
yes, please follow me on my art Instagram. It's
oh yeah,
artblog.org.
yeah, I'll definitely link to it. So but yeah,
Sure.
no, no,
Actually, I'm actually a poor example. While I may make art, I had no idea what the art business was like. It's the other people at Artsy that knew the art business, the existing art business, a lot better. Now I have a passion for it. That's good advice to hire people that will stay with you through the difficult times, because I love art so much, because I think it's one of the most important things. That's why I work through the struggles of Artsy, especially in the early days. Other people will be like, well, it's just a job, I don't care, and I'm gonna go. But if you care about the domain, then maybe you'll be able to retain people more. I'd say every single person that was successful at Artsy, if there was one thing I would qualify them as people who truly love art.
nice. Yeah, sounds like that's obviously great, great to have internally, but that coupled with, I think, the open source on the dev side is pretty powerful.
Yeah, it continues working. I'm very proud of the people who are still there and run the show, and the company is doing well. So I'm happy to see it. Especially, unfortunately, in times of COVID, online art market is definitely going to see probably a significant boost, because we love art anyway. Seeing it one way or another is a necessity. It's something that people want to do more, and today the screen is how we do it more than yesterday. So the importance of these online systems is only growing, and I think it will continue growing, and COVID has accelerated it quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. So maybe to kind of jump a little bit ahead and kind of speak to what you're doing now at AWS, is I guess as much as you can share about that.
Yeah, I can share a lot of things.
Awesome.
Despite what you may think, AWS is not a closed box. So I joined a service that was not public, and we launched it in November 2019. So that's called AWS Data Exchange. It's a marketplace. We help customers find and subscribe to data sets. So there's thousands of data sets from hundreds of providers. They can be in the financial industry, in healthcare, weather data, location data from companies like Foursquare, for example. And you can go and very quickly subscribe to these data sets. And that data gets delivered to you in your S3 or wherever you want it to be. So it's really cloud native data. We solve the problem of moving vast amounts of data around between providers and subscribers. We do all the billing and all the entitlements, so it goes on your AWS bill, which is really a big deal. As a company who is consuming cloud resources today, now you can consume data the same way as you consume compute. So I'm an engineer, so I work on those systems, so help teams develop those systems. And much of AWS Data Exchange is built in conjunction with AWS Marketplace, which is an older business. AWS Marketplace is software as a service business. So you have various product types, so SaaS, software as a service, server products. So these are virtual machines that you can boot inside of EC2. And you have things like machine learning models. So you can buy a variety of things on AWS Marketplace today. Data is a new category, even though it's a first-class service called AWS Data Exchange. So I work across systems in AWS Marketplace and Data Exchange and many other types of marketplace systems today. Yeah, and I'm in New York, and AWS Marketplace is a global team. Data Exchange is pretty much a small startup in New York City. In fact, it literally was very little change from Artsy to Data Exchange. It operates like a startup. It has a CEO. It has business development and all the kind of stuff, and we serve customers and focus on them.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is the primary differences, but
yeah. I'd say Amazon and Artsy are very similar from the startup point of view. I'd say the biggest difference is that Amazon takes Amazon takes its leadership principles very seriously and optimizes for the long term. So everything we build in AWS and everything we ship to customers is really a one-way door. It's like APIs are forever, or approximately forever. So we agonize over the highest reliability, operations, security, privacy. All those things are not where we can compromise at all. And so there's a lot of effort that goes into design and working through systems before anything can see the light of day, because we know that today it's working for one customer and tomorrow it's working for 10. The day after tomorrow, it will work for 1 million. So we build systems that scale to a large amount of customers very, very early. That's the biggest difference. Amazon can afford, AWS can afford to think long term. I guess business probably had this long-term approach from the very early days. And it's always tricky in an early stage startup to take a longer-term approach. You're acquiring debt much more, I'd say, in a tiny startup than the way AWS and startups within AWS function.
Yeah. So speaking on maybe how directly you worked with your customers in the market at Artsy versus kind of now at AWS, do you work directly with a lot of your as far as the marketplaces that use your services and your
absolutely, and this hasn't changed. Every single team member, whether it's inside AWS or inside Artsy, is exposed to customers and what customers want and need. And spend a lot of time understanding what problems customers are trying to solve, and then thinking about how the systems that we develop can solve those problems in medium long term. And Amazon does not do anything without solving a customer problem. It is entirely 100% of the company is dedicated to customers. Now, other companies may be looking at competition or maybe looking at their own profit margin or things like that. At Amazon, the only thing that matters is the customer. And it's very genuine. And so that's the short answer. Yes, there's nothing else.
Yeah. Is there maybe like a specific example that you can share as far as understanding a problem from a customer and then kind of the process of how you would help solve that?
Well, a good example is Artsy itself, which bought data or tried to buy data from companies like Foursquare about location data. Mm-hmm. And location data there's tons of companies that have location data that they're offering. The way we found the data that we wanted, Foursquare has awesome data that gives you not just X and Y of where your gallery is, but also Z, which is really important because galleries tend to be in buildings on multiple floors. So if you want to build something that can tell you in which gallery you are, you kind of need to know how high you are in the building. So that's a unique proposition of that data. So try to buy that data and then you get it delivered through mechanisms like floppy disks and pigeons. So there is a clear problem of how customers exchange, how providers send data to customers. You still have FTP in places like all over Manhattan today. There's FTP is being used to deliver data. So that's a classic example of where if I at the time was working inside AWS, I would see this happen and be like, oh my God, this is unacceptable. We can do so much better. We can remove the whole heavy lifting of exchanging data and even to think about it so that you can focus on the business proposition that you have. So I'd spend a lot of time with a company like Artsy, and we have business people that spend a tremendous amount of time with startups, from startups to large corporations, trying to understand what their problem is and trying to remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting from their lives. And the business people often engage PEs, which is myself, as soon as it gets a little technical or it gets more strategic, and where we have to think about something where maybe it's a partnership over the long term, maybe we can help a company migrate all of their data exchange onto AWS. Like that's significant amount of effort for everyone. We want to make sure that it's a business proposition that works for the customer. We want to make sure that we can help accelerate that better.
Nice. That was the perfect tie-in. Cool. So we're going to open it up for questions in a little bit. But did you have any kind of like last, any mentions for anything, whether it's Artsy kind of marketplaces in general or at AWS that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I want to say marketplaces are some of the most stable structures. And the book that I recommend reading is Tribal Leadership. It talks about organizations, I'm going to simplify dramatically, at multiple levels. There's groups of people that work together. There's like level one is I suck, you suck, everybody sucks. Level two is it's just me. Everybody else is okay, but I'm really bad at my job. Level three is, well, actually, I'm great at my job, but everybody else sucks at the job. And you find a lot of companies like this where you poll people and they're all like, yeah, I'm pulling my weight, but nobody, all these other people are terrible at what they do. And then level four is where everybody respects each other and looks up to each other and works together productively. It's most successful companies today. But the mechanism that helps you go from this like level three to level four, from something where you think you're the most capable person and everybody else sucks, to a productive place where the company can be successful, is actually creating triads of people. And so if you think of a marketplace, it is what you have: a buyer, you have a seller, you have supply, you have demand, and you have something that enables that connection, which is a win-win for everybody. It is truly creating value. So I think a lot of the reason why we see so many marketplaces is that they create real value if you can structure it well. So I'm really excited about all kinds of marketplaces. I really think it's the construct of the future. It's the construct of today and the construct of the future. And so it's worth spending time building marketplaces because I think those are defensible and work in the long term.
Yeah. On that note, are there any in particular that you're really excited about? Maybe some newer marketplaces?
I think I know a company that is built, I won't call names, but I recently encountered a company that is building a marketplace for products that are socially positive. So things that may help the environment, things that may help diversity, things like that. So it's products that are more conscious. I think this is a good example of a marketplace that has an opportunity for the future.
Nice. Cool. Cool. So we'll open it up for questions.
So I literally just built my own platform. I started on ShareTribe Go and I just switched over to my own custom platform. We launched it a few weeks ago. And just, I'm not really asking a question, just adding to the conversation. Basically, we decided to do that only when we got the feeling every so often that people would ask us for something that we wanted to do, and we would have to turn around and be like, I'm sorry, we can't do that. And they'd be like, why? And we'd say, we're running on a third-party platform that doesn't allow us to edit much. And once we'd answered that question with that answer about 10 times, we were like, okay, this needs to stop. We need to get onto our own platform where we can do whatever we want. And now we're using AWS and other things to support our brand new platform, and we're loving it. So yes, when you start having to apologize to users for something you can't do, that's probably the right time to start to switch, is my 2 cents on that. But
yeah, I agree with that. I'd add that maybe when you need to apologize to your users a lot, it might already be it might be too late. Ideally, you would anticipate those needs a little bit earlier. And that's the job of the CTO. I'm not saying like you have not done your job in that case. It's pretty straightforward to know when your customer is asking for something you can't deliver, that you wish you could deliver. If you can anticipate that, then you are even better. And then as the customer is asking, like, yes, I can actually deliver everything you're asking me for, and cheaply and incrementally on top of what I have. And it's not a major rewrite.
Awesome. And Anastasia, did you want to come on? I think you had a question.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, hello. Yeah, I just had a quick question. So you mentioned earlier on that basically, I think it was a three-way stream that you guys have with the platform. So the subscription one, and then is it like as a transaction fee? And then was there like a third part or no for the platform that you guys have for Artsy?
Yeah, so Artsy made money in a variety of ways. I think total like 6 different ways. From the ones I remember, we made a subscription fee from galleries. We made a commission on e-commerce sale. The mechanism of that exchange was buy now, make offer. There were different structures and different fees on that. We made a commission on auctions. So whenever somebody would buy a work in a live bidding via Artsy, where Artsy was the winner of that live auction against maybe people in Doubrovkine, other online platforms, Artsy would charge an additional commission there from the buyer's premium. It's the art world. The buyer pays usually premiums on purchasing through auctions. Artsy also did consignments, so it continues doing consignments. So you can go and consign a work. When that work gets sold at an auction, Artsy gets a commission for that. And then finally, Artsy was a content business, so there was some advertising money, brand partnerships, notably that would sponsor content. So that was another way that the company made money. I think I've covered everything.
Yeah, and then it's like, everything is built out on the platform, right? Or is it like a separate thing that you guys built it out? It's just literally on that one website.
Yeah, we built everything. All the services that power this were built pretty much ground up, except the systems that, such as payments, that we just use Stripe wherever possible.
Yeah, cool. And I had one more question.
Oh, and by the way, you can go and most of Artsy is open source, especially front end. So artsy.net, the website is open source. The mobile apps are open source, etc. So GitHub, Artsy, it's all there. And if you're building like a live bidding system, I would just steal all of that. It's all MIT licensed.
Oh, thank you.
I had another quick question. I'm always fascinated by .NET domains. Is there a reason why you stuck with .NET instead of .com, or how's that been?
Yes, the reason is because the squatter that owns artsy.com is highly unwilling to part with artsy.com for sentimental reasons for anywhere near reasonable amounts of money. So it's kind of a saga. So Artsy started as art.sy, and that was a Syrian domain that the founder Carter went to procure by like sending faxes to Syria and buying that domain through a local lawyer and stuff like that. And then the US has imposed sanctions, and we were not allowed to renew the domain. So you're not allowed to send money to Syria, and the domain could not be renewed. It also just disappeared. I think in 2015 on New Year's Eve, the domain just stopped working because they needed some kind of like server reboot somewhere, and they couldn't make it to the office to go and kick the box. So they're like, sorry, right now there's a war outside of my windows, and so your domain will have to wait. So we bought, I actually negotiated artsy.net that year from a buyer from a collector that was an Artsy customer for a few tens of thousands of dollars as a backup plan just in case. And then we were trying to negotiate artsy.com, but that just never worked out. So I think don't give money to squatters. Artsy.net worked out great and continues to work out great. Artsy.com is not worth a 7-figure amount that the squatter wanted. Do not lease domains that have this like perpetual lease. That's a new model because domains are going down in price, and they are less and less relevant, right? Most people will Google you before they type your domain name, or they'll use an app before they type your domain name. So domain value is tending to zero. And there will always, if you make many millions, you can find a way to buy the domain. At some point, there's just an absurd price that you'll have to pay, but just defer that. And then there's a new model because domains are going to zero, which is like lease my domain and I'll pay me every year 4% more year after year. I would never do that because you're effectively held hostage by a third party for a price that increases perpetually, and they will never sell it to you. So either buy it out front for a small or reasonable amount of money, or just don't worry about it. Find a different name.
Daniel, I had one question for you. My name's Chris. We're in Stockholm. I'm the founder of Klocker, which is a marketplace for luxury watches. So perhaps in the early days, we'll experience the similar issues with twofold. First being condition. Interested to understand how you got around the condition of art when you have people paying such high prices for genuine pieces of art.
Yeah, my dad gave me a Panerai when I turned 30, which was 13 years ago, as a gift. It's sitting in my safe right now because I'm not wearing a watch because who knows what time it is anyway. But watches is a cool market. Artsy never dealt with condition. The seller is on record for the condition of items being sold. So auction houses, when you're buying from Christie's or Phillips, they will list the condition report, and it's a big deal. It has to be accurate. And then for galleries, most of the high-priced works would be bought by creating a lead, and the person would actually go and see the work in the high prices, like in the millions of dollars. So it was not uncommon for a collector in New York to buy something via Artsy for $1 million after flying to London to go see the work.
Okay.
So that's the conditions were listed, and then but it was always a common question, like, what do you do when I receive the thing? Because art is not something you would return.
No.
And it can be tricky. Most things though a lot of things in the art world get bought sight unseen. That's because what you are buying is the artist. It's not it's not the work. The work is just an artifact, and nobody cares what. I mean, it has to be in good condition, but ultimately it's about it's about who it is rather than what it is.
But did you see, as you grew, did you see your model shift where you work directly with artists themselves? Or were you always working with intermediary brokers or auction houses?
Yeah, Artsy never worked with artists directly, and I mean, I can't say never, but I don't think it will. Artsy is a B2B or a B2C business, so it has. We always believe that that galleries and continue to believe that galleries provide a tremendous value to the artist. Like an artist's job, it's very much a job, is to make art. And the person selling the art is usually not the artist amongst the successful artists, because the gallery is there to support, the gallery is there to create the primary market for the artist. So they hire an artist for 2 years, pay them 60 grand a year to paint, and then do a show. And if that works, they collect 60% of the revenue or something like that. But it's effectively the creation of the primary market for the artist. The gallery is the one maintaining relationships with collectors. So we never wanted to work around that. We think it was and probably continues to be a bad business model, because galleries don't want to compete with artists directly. They want to compete amongst themselves. We wanted to work with professional sellers.
And then just to add one more question is, when you're dealing with high transaction volume amounts, how did you process those during the early days?
So we processed those through the payment processors just fine. All these limits can be raised. We triggered every limit possible and imaginable out there in payment processing, where like, oh, this looks like fraud because it's too big or something like that. We had to open tickets and call and be like, this transaction is sitting there and it is not processed. It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what's going on? It's slowly the internet is becoming more used to high transaction amounts, and it's less and less a problem. People buy things on their Amexes at any volume. So you can buy $1 million thing on your Amex. It's fine on Artsy today.
I'll go and do it now.
Please.
Cool. So we're kind of running out of time, but I definitely wanted to let Andy come on here. He had, I think, one last question.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Thanks. So yeah, I was wondering, but by the way, in addition to being a CTO, I'm an artist who's had work listed on Artsy. It was a good experience. But I was wondering, did you guys introduce your various commission prices kind of along the way, sort of one at a time, or did you have multiple commissions at once at the beginning? And B, how much did you iterate on commission price? In other words, did you kind of pick a price, bounce up, down a little bit before you stabilized those various, 5 different commission prices you had?
It's a great question. Artsy began, the first transactions were subscription, right? So you have a gallery that pays about $5,000 a year to be on Artsy. There were 3,200 paying galleries when I left. There's a lot more probably now. So it's a substantial business. The gallery paying a flat fee, selling hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of works on Artsy, which there were several, more than several, very successful galleries on the platform. They don't want to pay commission because they are paying $5,000 a year. So whether they're selling or not, it's a flat fee, sounds awesome, right? So, but it's not economically sustainable over a long period of time. So Artsy wanted to introduce commission-based sales at a certain price point. We did it by offering new features, new services. So we built Buy Now and Make Offer, where we first launched Buy Now in 2018, I think, and then we launched Make Offer. So it's a way to buy directly, and those works were going to get much more merchandising. So for example, Artsy had a machine learning model for calculating merchandisability of a work and would recommend those works to collectors. So works that have a high likelihood to sell and to these specific people. So that computation yielded names and works, and we emailed those people and said, like, look, there's a work we think you want to buy. That's quite complex, but that's a feature that you might want to opt in for commission. And I think commission was flat, but it goes down and caps. I don't remember at what amounts at some price point, right? Because like millions of dollars you don't want to take commission.
Right.
It's really difficult to get this whole commission-based business, especially in the art world. In the auctions market, the buyer pays the premium and the seller pays the premium. So it's like you pay for the privilege of buying something. You are effectively paying that commission. It's really bizarre. It's like the other way around than in most markets. So yeah, it's a challenge. But if you provide value to your customers that they cannot get in a different way, then they will pay for it. That's the key.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, this was great. So we're actually running out of time now. But Dan, man, this was super insightful. Is there any kind of last bit of advice that you want to share, maybe, or?
I don't listen to anybody's advice. Do your own thing is my last piece of advice. I think, especially for founders. The reason why I'm not a CEO of a super successful Amazon-like business is because I'm pretty conservative in my ideas. So I tend not to stretch those too far. So don't listen to me and do your own thing is my final advice. And finally, you're welcome to contact me if you want over email. Is fine. I'll do my best to answer if I can be helpful in any other way.
Awesome. That was a good note to end it on. And then also too, where can we follow you? Where's the best place?
Yeah, so Twitter, dblog.org in one word. You'll share the link is probably the best one, and then email it's dblog@dblog.org. Just like the same name everywhere. I'm easily Googleable as well.